The harsh fluorescent lights made my eyes water as I scrubbed at a particularly stubborn stain on the marble floor. 3 hours into my shift at the Rossi estate, and my knees ached against the cold surface. I'd been working here for just over a month, one of many maids tending to this sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. The pay was better than anything I could have hoped for with my limited experience and desperate circumstances. But the work was grueling. "Elena, the West Wing still needs attention." Mrs. Vega, the head housekeeper, appeared above me like a strict apparition, her voice clipped and professional. "And don't forget Mr. Rossi is hosting guests tonight. Everything must be immaculate." I nodded, not daring to mention I'd been working without a break. "Yes, Mrs. Vega. I'll go there now." The West Wing. My stomach tightened. It housed Mr. Rossi's private study and rooms that remained perpetually locked. None of us spoke about it, but we all knew who Matteo Rossi was, what he was. The whispers among the staff painted him as both monster and savior, depending on who you asked. I had yet to see him in person, as he was often away on business, but his presence saturated every corner of this house. I gathered my cleaning supplies, the smell of lemon polish and bleach clinging to my uniform. As I made my way through the labyrinthine corridors, the mansion transformed around me. Plush carpets replaced sterile tile, and the art on the walls shifted from pleasant landscapes to imposing portraits and abstract pieces worth more than I would earn in several lifetimes. The sound of men's voices drifted from behind a partially open door at the end of the hallway. I slowed my steps, trying to make myself invisible as I had learned to do. In this house, hearing or seeing the wrong thing could cost you more than just your job. "The shipment will arrive tomorrow night." A gruff voice, unfamiliar, and the issue with the Colombians, a second voice, smoother but cold. I froze. I should turn around. I should walk away right now. But before I could retreat, the door swung open fully, and I found myself face to face with 3 men in tailored suits. 2 I didn't recognize, burly, stern-faced men with subtle bulges beneath their jackets that I knew instinctively were weapons. And then there was the 3rd man. I knew immediately who he was, though we'd never met. Matteo Rossi stood slightly apart from the others, an air of authority radiating from him like heat from a flame. Tall, with broad shoulders tapering to a lean waist, he wore his charcoal suit like armor. His dark hair was neatly styled, contrasting with the shadow of stubble along his sharp jawline. But it was his eyes that trapped me, so dark they were almost black, assessing me with cool detachment. I'm sorry, sir. Mrs. Vega sent me to clean the West Wing." My voice came out as barely a whisper. My cleaning caddy clutched against my chest like a shield. The 2 men tensed, hands moving subtly toward their concealed weapons, but Rossi raised a hand, stopping them with that simple gesture. "What's your name?" His voice was surprisingly soft, with an underlying Italian accent that emerged on certain syllables. "Elena Moretti, sir." I kept my eyes lowered, heart hammering so loudly I was certain he could hear it. "Moretti?" Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps. "Italian heritage?" "On my father's side, sir." Why was he asking? Why did it matter? He studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Up close, I could smell his cologne. Something expensive with notes of sandalwood and amber. There was a small scar above his right eyebrow. A tiny imperfection on his otherwise immaculate face. "The West Wing will have to wait," he finally said. "Marco, Lorenzo, give us a moment." The 2 men exchanged glances but nodded and moved down the hallway, though not before giving me warning looks that made my blood run cold. "Follow me," Rossi said, turning without waiting to see if I would obey, as if there was any question. I followed him into what must have been his study. A vast room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk of polished mahogany, and windows overlooking the manicured grounds. He gestured toward a chair across from the desk, but I remained standing, still clutching my cleaning supplies, afraid to sit in my dirty uniform on the pristine furniture. "Sit, Elena." This time it wasn't a suggestion. I perched on the edge of the chair, setting my caddy on the floor beside me. "Have I done something wrong, Mr. Rossi?" He moved to a bar cart in the corner and poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. "Do you drink whiskey?" "No, sir. I don't drink on the job." A slight smile curved his lips as he set one glass in front of me anyway. Tell me how you came to work here. Was this a test? Mrs. Vega hired me after my interview. I have references. That's not what I'm asking. He leaned against the desk, looming over me. Why are you working as a maid in my home? You're educated. I can tell by your speech. And you're too watchful to be someone who has led a simple life. My mouth went dry. How could he see through me so easily? I needed the work, sir, and the pay is good. He took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving mine. Do you know who I am, Elena Moretti? You're my employer, sir. Don't play naive. It doesn't suit you. Heat rose to my cheeks. People talk. I've heard things. And what things have you heard? I swallowed hard. That you're connected, powerful, that your business interests extend beyond what's strictly conventional. He laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. Diplomatic. I appreciate that. He set down his glass. But I need honesty from those in my home. Those who might overhear things they shouldn't. So tell me, Elena, why are you really here? Because I've had you investigated since you started, and there are some inconsistencies. My blood turned to ice. Investigated? Do you think I let just anyone into my home without knowing everything about them? His voice remained calm, almost gentle, but I could feel the danger beneath. Your references check out, but before 6 months ago, there's very little record of an Elena Moretti. It's almost as if you appeared out of nowhere. I should have been more careful, should have created a more detailed background. But I'd been desperate, and this job had been too perfect to pass up. I left my old life behind, I said carefully, started fresh. Running from something? Or someone? Images flashed through my mind. Jake's face contorted in rage, the bruises hidden beneath my clothes, the baby growing inside me that I hadn't told him about before I fled, the baby I had lost in the stress of my escape. Both, I whispered, unable to meet his gaze. He studied me in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then he straightened and walked to the window, his back to me. My father used to say you can always tell a person's true character by their eyes. Yours tell a story of survival, Elena. I remained silent, unsure what response he expected. The thing about survivors, he continued, is they do whatever necessary to stay alive, including lying, including infiltrating places where they don't belong. I'm just a maid, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I clean your house, that's all. He turned back to me, his expression unreadable. Then why did you take a picture of the documents on my desk yesterday? My heart stopped. The phone in my pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I don't know what you're talking about. In 3 swift strides, he was in front of me, hand extended. Show me your phone, Elena. That's private. Nothing is private in my house. His voice hardened. Show me the truth, or things will become very unpleasant. With trembling fingers, I pulled my phone from my pocket. He took it, his fingers brushing against mine, sending an involuntary shiver through me. He scrolled through it quickly, expertly, his expression darkening. Then he looked up at me, eyes cold. Who are you working for? No one. Don't lie to me. For the first time, his voice rose, making me flinch. He noticed my reaction and immediately modulated his tone. You have photographs of my private documents, my security system, and the faces of my men. You are not just a maid, Elena Moretti, if that's even your real name. Tears burned behind my eyes. I was trapped, caught in a lie by a man who killed people for lesser offenses. Please, I whispered. I have my reasons. As do I for keeping you alive until you explain yourself. He leaned closer. Last chance, the truth. At that moment, the study door burst open, and Mrs. Vega appeared breathless. Mr. Rossi, forgive the interruption, but there's an incident at the gate. A man claiming to know one of the staff. He's making threats, demanding entry. Rossi's attention shifted. Who? Mrs. Vega's eyes flicked to me. He's asking for Elena. The blood drained from my face. It couldn't be. How had he found me? Rossi caught my expression, understanding dawning in his eyes. Describe him. Tall, muscular, light brown hair, a scar on his neck. He's quite insistent, sir. Security is holding him back, but he's causing a scene. Jake. It was Jake. I see. Rossi's eyes remained on me. Tell them to let him in. Escort him to the south parlor and ensure he's comfortable. I'll speak with him shortly. No! The word burst from me before I could stop it. Both Rossi and Mrs. Vega stared at me in surprise. Please don't let him in. He's dangerous. More dangerous than me? Rossi asked softly, a strange glint in his eye. Mrs. Vega looked between us, clearly confused. Sir? Do as I said, Mrs. Vega, and send Marco to me immediately. She nodded and left, closing the door behind her. The moment she was gone, Rossi's demeanor changed entirely. He moved with lightning speed, taking my arm and pulling me to my feet. You have exactly 30 seconds to tell me who that man is and why you're really here before I hand you over to him. The tears I'd been fighting spilled over. His name is Jake Mercer. He's my ex-fiancé. He's the one I was running from. Rossi's grip on my arm loosened slightly. And the photos on your phone? Insurance, I whispered. In case he found me. I thought if I had something valuable, something dangerous to someone powerful, it might keep me safe if he ever tracked me down. So you chose to blackmail me? His voice was dangerously soft. I never intended to use them unless I had no choice. Please, you don't understand what he's like. What he'll do to me if he gets me alone. Something in Rossi's expression shifted. Oh, but I do understand men like him, Elena, better than you might think. He released my arm and stepped back. Stay here. Don't move. Don't speak to anyone. Do you understand? I nodded, too terrified to do anything else. He moved to the door but paused with his hand on the knob. If you're lying to me about any of this, you'll wish I had handed you over to him. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in his study, surrounded by evidence of his illicit empire, with nothing but the certainty that whatever happened next would irreversibly change my life. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence, counting down the moments until my past and present collided. Minutes passed like hours as I stood frozen in Rossi's study. I could flee. The window was right there, and in the chaos of Jake's arrival, I might slip away unnoticed. But where would I go? Jake had found me once. He would find me again, and now I had Rossi to fear as well. I moved to the window, watching as rain began to spatter against the glass. The manicured ground stretched before me, bordered by a high stone wall with security cameras mounted at regular intervals. A gilded cage, and I had willingly walked into it. My phone sat on Rossi's desk where he'd left it. I picked it up, my finger hovering over the delete button for the incriminating photos, but something stopped me. These photos were my only leverage, my only protection in a house full of dangerous men. The door opened, and I whirled around, expecting Rossi's return. Instead, Marco entered, his face impassive. Mr. Rossi requests your presence, he said flatly. Where is he? My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. With your visitor. My stomach dropped. Jake and Rossi in the same room. It was a nightmare scenario. What is he going to do? Marco's expression didn't change. That depends on you, I suspect. Follow me. We moved through the mansion in tense silence. The usual bustle of staff was noticeably absent. Mrs. Vega must have cleared them away from whatever was about to happen. As we approached the south parlor, I heard voices, one raised in anger, unmistakably Jake's, and the other calm and measured, Rossi. Marco stopped outside the door. He said to wait until called. I nodded, straining to hear the conversation within. Don't care who you are. She's mine, and I've come to take her home. Jake's voice slurring slightly. He'd been drinking, which made him even more dangerous. Mr. Mercer, I understand your frustration, but as I've explained, my staff are under my protection while in my employ. Rossi sounded perfectly reasonable, almost bored. Protection? You're keeping my fiancé as, what, a maid? Do you have any idea who I am? I know precisely who you are, Mr. Mercer. son of State Senator Mercer, former college football star, currently unemployed despite your father's numerous attempts to secure you positions. I also know about your 3 arrests for domestic violence, all charges mysteriously dropped. And I know about the restraining order filed against you by Elena 6 months ago." The silence that followed was deafening. How did Rossi know all of this? He'd said he had me investigated, but this level of detail... "You don't know what you're talking about," Jake finally said, his voice lower, more threatening. "Elena and I had a misunderstanding. She overreacted. She's emotionally unstable, especially after losing the baby." My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. The baby. He knew about the baby I'd lost after fleeing. The stress and trauma too much for my body to handle. But how? I hadn't told anyone. "Is that what you tell yourself?" Rossi's voice had changed, taking on a dangerous edge I hadn't heard before. "That she's unstable? That she deserved what you did to her? Listen, you Italian piece of sh..." There was a sudden commotion, the sound of furniture scraping, a grunt of pain, and then silence. "Marco," Rossi called, his voice eerily calm. "Bring her in now." Marco opened the door and gave me a slight push forward. The scene inside made me freeze in the doorway. Jake was seated in a chair, but not by choice. 2 of Rossi's men, one I recognized as Lorenzo, stood on either side, hands on his shoulders, keeping him in place. Jake's face was flushed with anger and alcohol, a trickle of blood running from his split lip. His eyes found mine, and the familiar mixture of rage and possessiveness made my skin crawl. "Elena," he said, attempting a smile that came out as a grimace. "Baby, tell these men there's been a mistake. Tell them you're coming home with me." Rossi stood with his back to the fireplace, watching me intently. His posture was relaxed, one hand in his pocket, but there was nothing casual about the cold calculation in his eyes. "Elena," Rossi said softly, "your friend seems to think you belong to him, that you want to leave my employment and return with him. Is this true?" All eyes in the room were on me, Jake's pleading and threatening at once, Rossi's coolly assessing, the guards impassive. I straightened my spine, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. "No, I don't want to go anywhere with him." Jake lunged forward but was immediately shoved back into the chair. "You ungrateful bitch, after everything I've done for you. You think you can just walk away from me?" "I already did," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. 6 months ago. And I have a restraining order against you, Jake. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me." "A piece of paper doesn't mean shit," Jake snarled. "You're mine, Elena. You've always been mine, and no one," he shot a venomous look at Rossi, "is going to keep what's mine from me." Rossi moved then, crossing the room to stand beside me. Though he didn't touch me, I could feel the heat of his body, smell that expensive cologne. Somehow, his presence steadied me. "Mr. Mercer," Rossi said, his accent more pronounced now, "I'm afraid you've wasted a trip. Elena has made her choice clear. She works for me now, and she's staying." "You don't understand," Jake said, changing tactics, his voice taking on the reasonable tone he used to manipulate others. "She's not well. She's been through trauma. She lost our baby, and she hasn't been the same since. She needs help, professional help. Her family agrees with me. My family. The ones who had sided with Jake after he'd convinced them I was unstable, that my accusations against him were delusions. They hadn't believed me either." "Is that true, Elena?" Rossi asked. "Are you unwell? Do you need professional help?" I met his gaze, seeing something I hadn't expected. A genuine question, not a threat. The only thing wrong with me was believing I deserved what he did to me. "I'm not crazy. I never was." Rossi nodded slightly, then returned his attention to Jake. "You hear that, Mr. Mercer? The lady is staying. Now, I've been polite thus far because of your father's position, but my patience is wearing thin. I suggest you leave my property immediately and forget Elena's whereabouts." Jake laughed, an ugly sound. "You think I'm afraid of you? Do you know who my father is? One call from me, and he'll have the FBI crawling all over this place. Everyone knows what you really are, Rossi. A criminal. A thug in an expensive suit. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Rossi's men tensed, hands moving toward their weapons, but Rossi himself remained perfectly still. "Show him," Rossi said quietly. Lorenzo nodded and pulled a tablet from inside his jacket. He tapped the screen a few times, then held it in front of Jake's face. I couldn't see what was displayed, but the color drained from Jake's face. "That's... Where did you get those?" Jake's voice was barely audible. "I have many resources, Mr. Mercer." Rossi took the tablet and scrolled through whatever was on the screen. "These hospital reports make for interesting reading. 3 different emergency rooms in 2 years. Elena was quite creative with her explanations, wasn't she? Falling downstairs, walking into doors. Such a clumsy woman." His voice hardened. "Except for this last visit, the one where she finally told the truth, the one that coincided with her losing your child. My legs threatened to give way beneath me. Those records were supposed to be private. How had Rossi obtained them? You can't prove anything," Jake said. But his confidence was cracking. "No? How about these?" Rossi swiped the screen again. "Text messages threatening her life if she left you. Charming. Or these photographs of her injuries that she sent to her friend. What was her name? Yes, Sophia, for safekeeping." He looked up at Jake. "I can prove everything, Mr. Mercer. And while your father may have influence with local law enforcement, my reach extends much further." Jake's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. "What do you want? Money?" Rossi laughed, a chilling sound. "I have more money than your entire family combined. No. What I want is simple. You will leave here and never contact Elena again. You will withdraw any missing persons report you may have filed. You will tell your family and anyone else who asks that Elena and you broke up amicably, and you have no idea where she is now. In return, I won't send these records to every news outlet in the country." "You're blackmailing me." "I prefer to think of it as offering you a choice, the sensible choice." Rossi set the tablet down and leaned closer to Jake, his voice dropping to a whisper I could barely hear. "Because the alternative is that you disappear, Mr. Mercer, completely, and all your father's influence won't help him find what's left of you." Jake paled further, finally understanding the true danger of his situation. "Fine," he spat. "Keep her. She's damaged goods anyway." I flinched at his words, and something in Rossi's expression changed, hardened. "Marco, Lorenzo, escort Mr. Mercer off the property. Ensure he understands that if he returns, our next conversation won't be nearly so pleasant." The 2 men hauled Jake to his feet. He gave me one last hate-filled look as they dragged him away. "This isn't over, Elena," he called over his shoulder. "You'll regret this." When the door closed behind them, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My legs finally gave way, and I sank onto the nearest chair, trembling uncontrollably. Shock, relief, fear. A maelstrom of emotions washed over me. Rossi watched me for a long moment, then moved to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He offered one to me, and this time I took it, downing half in one burning swallow. "Thank you," I whispered. He sat across from me, studying my face. "Don't thank me yet. We still have the matter of your attempted blackmail to discuss." Reality crashed back around me. Of course. I'd been so relieved about Jake that I'd momentarily forgotten my own precarious position. "I never intended to use those photos," I said. "I just needed insurance. Against Jake finding you, or against me discovering your true purpose here?" I met his gaze. "Both, I suppose." "And what is your true purpose, Elena? Because I'm still not convinced you're just a maid who happened to take compromising photos of my business." The alcohol had loosened my tongue and dampened my fear. "That's exactly what I am. A woman desperate enough to do anything to stay hidden. Even work for someone like you." His eyebrow raised slightly. "Someone like me? A man who can make threats like you just did to Jake and clearly mean them." He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Tell me something, Elena. Those hospital reports, the baby. Was that all true?" I looked away, pain lancing through me. "Yes, and Jake was the father." I nodded, unable to speak. "You were going to raise a child with a man like that?" Anger flared suddenly. "You think I had a choice? You think I didn't try to leave before?" Every time I tried, he found me. He threatened my family, my friends. He had money, connections. There was nowhere I could go that he couldn't reach. Until now, Rossi said quietly. Our eyes met, and something unspoken passed between us. Why did you help me? I asked. You could have just handed me over to him, or fired me for taking those photos. He was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, with an undercurrent of something I couldn't identify. My mother was like you, beautiful, resilient, trapped by a man who claimed to love her while he destroyed her piece by piece. He took a sip of his drink. My father. I stared at him, shocked by this unexpected revelation. What happened to her? She died when I was 12. An accident, they called it. But I knew better. His eyes had taken on a faraway look. I swore then that I would never become my father, and that I would never stand by while another man did to a woman what he did to my mother. I didn't know what to say. This vulnerability from a man like Rossi was the last thing I had expected. Your photos, he said, abruptly changing the subject. Delete them. Without hesitation, I took out my phone and erased every incriminating image I had taken. I held up the screen to show him it was done. What happens now? I asked quietly. He stood, straightening his already immaculate suit. Now, Elena Moretti, we have a decision to make. You know too much about my business to simply return to being a maid, and after tonight's display, Jake may not stay away forever, despite my warnings. Fear clawed its way back up my throat. Are you firing me? No. He moved to the window, looking out at the rain that was now falling heavily. I'm offering you a choice. You can leave. I'll provide you with enough money to start over somewhere new, with a new identity that even Jake won't be able to trace. Or? I prompted, when he didn't continue. He turned back to me, his dark eyes intense. Or you can stay. Not as a maid, but as my assistant. Someone who works closely with me, under my direct protection. Jake wouldn't dare touch you then. Your assistant? I repeated, bewildered. But I don't know anything about your business. A slight smile curved his lips. You know more than you should already, and you've proven yourself resourceful, observant. Qualities I value. Why would you trust me after I took those photos? I don't. Not yet, but I will be watching you very closely, Elena. And in time, perhaps trust will come. The clock on the mantel chimed, breaking the tension between us. Outside, the storm intensified. Rain lashing against the windows like nature itself was emphasizing the gravity of the choice before me. I need your answer, Rossi said. I looked at him. This dangerous, complicated man who had just saved me from my worst nightmare. Working directly for him would mean being pulled deeper into his world, a world I had only glimpsed from the margins. But it also meant safety from Jake, at least for now. I'll stay, I said, sealing my fate with 2 simple words. The rain continued through the night, drumming against the roof of my new accommodations. After I had agreed to stay, Rossi had immediately arranged for me to be moved from the cramped staff quarters to a spacious suite in the east wing of the mansion, closer to his private rooms. For your safety, he'd said, though I suspected it was also to keep me under closer surveillance. The suite was larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. A bedroom with a king-size bed draped in luxurious linens, a private bathroom with a marble tub big enough to swim in, and a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. It felt surreal to be surrounded by such opulence after months of bare-bones living, first on the run and then in the servants' quarters. I stood at the window, watching lightning illuminate the grounds in brief electric flashes. What had I agreed to? Working directly for Matteo Rossi meant being pulled into his world, a world of power, danger, and secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But the alternative, running again, always looking over my shoulder, seemed worse somehow. A soft knock at my door startled me from my thoughts. It was nearly midnight. Who would be calling at this hour? Cautiously, I approached the door. Who is it? I called, one hand on the lock. Mrs. Vega, Miss Moretti. I opened the door to find the head housekeeper standing rigidly in the hallway, her face a carefully composed mask that didn't quite hide her displeasure at my sudden change in status. Mr. Rossi asked me to deliver these to you, she said, holding out a garment bag and a small leather portfolio. Your new wardrobe will be delivered tomorrow, but these should suffice for the morning. You're expected in Mr. Rossi's study at 7 a.m. sharp. I took the items, noting the designer label on the garment bag. Thank you, Mrs. Vega. She didn't move, her eyes scanning the room behind me. May I speak frankly, Miss Moretti? Something in her tone made me tense. Of course. You're not the first, she said, her voice lowered. Mr. Rossi occasionally elevates staff to positions closer to him. It never ends well for them. A chill ran through me despite the warmth of the room. This isn't what you think. He offered me a job as his assistant because of my situation with Jake. Of course, she said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe me. Just be careful. Mr. Rossi can be generous, even kind in his way, but he's also dangerous. More dangerous than your ex-fiancé, though in different ways. Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway with more questions than answers. Inside the garment bag, I found an elegant black dress and matching blazer, along with silk undergarments still bearing price tags that made me gasp. The portfolio contained an employment contract outlining my new position as personal assistant to Matteo Rossi, with a salary that was more than 5 times what I'd been making as a maid. I sat on the edge of the bed, contract in hand, reality sinking in. There would be no going back to my old life, not that I wanted to. But moving forward meant stepping into unknown territory. I thought of Mrs. Vega's warning, "You're not the first." What had happened to the others? Sleep evaded me that night, my mind too full of the day's events. When I finally drifted off near dawn, my dreams were a confusing tangle of Jake's rage and Rossi's dark, unreadable eyes. At precisely 6:55 a.m., I stood outside Rossi's study, dressed in the clothes he'd provided. The dress fit perfectly, almost suspiciously so, hugging my curves without being inappropriate for a professional setting. I'd pulled my hair back into a sleek ponytail and applied minimal makeup, unsure of what was expected in my new role. "You can go in," Marco said, appearing silently beside me. "He's waiting." I jumped, startled by his sudden presence. "Do you always sneak up on people like that?" A hint of amusement flickered across his usually stoic face. "Only the ones who need to learn to be more aware of their surroundings. Point taken." I knocked once on the heavy wooden door and entered at Rossi's. "Come in." He sat behind his massive desk, reading from a stack of papers. Unlike yesterday, he was dressed more casually, dark trousers and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to expose muscled forearms. A holster was visible under his left arm, the gun a stark reminder of who he really was. "Good morning, Elena," he said without looking up. "Coffee?" I noticed a silver tray on a side table with an elaborate espresso machine. "Yes, thank you." "Make mine as well. Black, 2 sugars." So this was how it would begin, with me making his coffee. I moved to the machine, grateful that I at least knew how to use one from my brief stint at a cafe before coming here. "I see the clothes fit," he commented as I brought him his cup. His eyes tracked over me briefly, professionally, but I still felt exposed somehow. "Yes, thank you." "How did you know my size?" A slight smile. "I'm observant." I took a seat across from him, sipping my own coffee. "What exactly will my duties entail, Mr. Rossi?" "Matteo," he corrected. "If you're to be my assistant, we should dispense with formalities when we're alone." The intimacy of the request caught me off guard. "All right. Matteo." His name felt strange on my tongue, foreign yet somehow familiar. He slid a tablet across the desk toward me. "Your primary responsibilities will include managing my schedule, arranging travel, handling correspondence, and occasionally accompanying me to meetings or events. The tablet is secured with encryption. Only you and I can access it." I turned it on, finding a meticulously organized calendar and a series of folders labeled with cryptic abbreviations. "What about your business? The less legal aspects of it?" His expression remained neutral. "You'll be exposed to certain elements of my various enterprises. I expect absolute discretion. And if I'm uncomfortable with what I see, then you shouldn't have taken the position." He leaned forward, eyes intense. "Let me be clear, Elena. I offered you this job because I saw something in you. Resilience, intelligence, discretion. But make no mistake, My world is not for the faint of heart. You will see and hear things that would disturb most people. If that's going to be a problem, tell me now. I should have been terrified. Any sane person would be. But instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. After living with Jake's unpredictable violence, there was something almost comforting about Rossi's straightforward approach to danger. I understand, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm not naive about who you are or what you do, but I made my choice last night, and I'll stand by it. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied. Good. Now your first task is to review these files. He slid a folder across the desk. They contain information on guests attending a charity gala I'm hosting next week. I need to know everything about them, their businesses, their vulnerabilities, their allegiances. I opened the folder to find dossiers on several prominent business figures and politicians. You're investigating your own guests? In my position, information is power, Elena. I never walk into any room without knowing exactly who I'm dealing with. He stood, moving to refill his coffee. Just as I investigated you, I looked up sharply. How much do you know about me? More than you've told me. He leaned against his desk, closer to me now. I know you were born Elena Sofia Moretti in Boston, that your mother died when you were 15. That you graduated with honors from Boston University with a degree in international relations. That you met Jacob Mercer when you were working as an event coordinator for his father's re-election campaign. That you were engaged to him for 14 months before you disappeared 6 months ago, withdrawing nearly all your savings and leaving everything behind. Each fact landed like a physical blow. He knew everything. Or almost everything. You missed a few details, I said, my voice barely audible. Then fill in the blanks for me. I set the folder down, my hands shaking slightly. What do you want to know? Everything you haven't told me, starting with why a woman with your education and background was working as a maid in my home. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. If I was going to work for him, to rely on his protection, he deserved the whole truth. After I left Jake, I went to a women's shelter in Philadelphia. I was pregnant with his child. The words caught in my throat, still painful to say aloud. The stress, the fear, maybe the injuries from the last time I lost the baby 3 weeks after I left him. Rossi's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I'm sorry. I had to keep moving. Jake's family has connections everywhere. Police, private investigators, they were all looking for me. I changed my appearance, used cash only, stayed off social media. But I was running out of money, and I needed somewhere to hide where Jake wouldn't think to look. So you applied for a job in the home of a known criminal, Rossi finished, a hint of incredulity in his voice. Wasn't that trading one danger for another? I laughed bitterly. At least your reputation suggested you don't hurt women, and I thought I'd be invisible here. Just another maid in a big house. Until you decided to take those photos. I looked away. That was impulsive. Stupid. I overheard something about a shipment coming in. Saw the documents on your desk. I thought if I had leverage, something I could threaten to expose if Jake ever found me, you'd have been dead before you could use them. Rossi said matter-of-factly. My men would have found them on your phone, traced any copies you might have made, and eliminated the threat. A chill ran through me at his casual description of my potential murder. Then why am I still alive? Why offer me this position instead of just eliminating the threat? He returned to his chair, expression unreadable. As I said, I saw something in you, something familiar. He paused. And perhaps I have a weakness for survivors. Before I could respond, the door opened, and Lorenzo entered without knocking, his face grim. Boss, we have a situation. The Colombians are demanding a meeting, today. Rossi's demeanor changed instantly, all traces of our almost intimate conversation vanishing. When and where? Their territory. Warehouse by the docks. 2 hours. Absolutely not, Rossi said, his voice hard. Neutral ground or nothing. Lorenzo shifted uncomfortably. They say they have information about a leak in your organization, someone feeding information to the feds. Rossi's eyes flicked briefly to me, then back to Lorenzo. Fine. But not the warehouse. The restaurant on 12th. Private room. And tell Marco to double security. Lorenzo nodded and left as abruptly as he'd arrived. Rossi turned back to me. All business now. Study those files. I'll expect a summary when I return. He moved to a closet in the corner of the study and extracted a different jacket. This one slightly bulkier, designed, I realized, to better conceal his weapon. Be careful, I said, before I could stop myself. He paused, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Always. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the dossiers of his guests and the lingering scent of his cologne. The hours stretched as I waited for Rossi's return. I'd completed my review of the files, making detailed notes on each guest, their businesses, connections, potential leverage points. It was disturbing how easily I'd slipped into this role, analyzing people as assets or threats rather than human beings. Twilight had fallen by the time I heard footsteps approaching the study. I sat up straighter, arranging my notes, but it wasn't Rossi who entered, Miss Moretti, Marco said, his expression even more stoic than usual. Mr. Rossi requests your presence. Where is he? His private quarters, this way. I followed Marco through corridors I'd never seen before, deeper into Rossi's domain. We stopped before an unmarked door, where Marco knocked 3 times before opening it. The room beyond was a surprise. Not the austere, minimalist space I'd expected, but a warm, almost cozy sitting room with leather furniture, richly colored rugs, and walls lined with books. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the room. Rossi stood with his back to the door, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He'd removed his jacket and holster, and I could see a dark stain on the side of his white shirt. Thank you, Marco. That will be all, Rossi said without turning. Marco hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave. Boss, the doctor said. I'm fine. Go. With one last concerned look, Marco left, closing the door behind him. Rossi finally turned to face me, and I gasped. A bruise was forming along his jaw, and a small cut above his eyebrow had been recently cleaned. What happened? I asked, moving toward him instinctively. Business disagreement. He gestured to the stain on his shirt. Not mine, if you're concerned. I should have been horrified, should have run from this man who so casually spoke of violence. Instead, I found myself asking, do you need anything? First aid? He studied me for a moment, then set down his glass. The doctor's already been here, but I could use your help with something else. He began unbuttoning his shirt, wincing slightly. The doctor wrapped my ribs, nothing broken, just bruised. But I need to change. I froze, uncertain. Was this a test? A seduction? But as the shirt fell away, revealing the white bandages wrapped tightly around his torso, I saw only vulnerability, not an advance. There's a clean shirt in the wardrobe, he said, nodding toward a door to what I assumed was his bedroom. I moved to retrieve it, hyper-aware of the intimacy of being in his private space. The bedroom was as I might have expected. Dark woods, rich fabrics, impeccably organized. I found a shirt hanging in the massive wardrobe and returned to find Rossi sitting on the edge of a chair, looking uncharacteristically tired. Here, I said, holding it out. He took it, but made no move to put it on. The meeting didn't go as planned, he said, his voice low. The Colombians were setting us up. Someone had told them things they shouldn't know about my operation. I tensed. The leak they mentioned? No. That was just to get me there. His eyes met mine. They were going to kill me, Elena. And the only reason they knew where to set the trap was because of the photos on your phone. My blood turned to ice. What? But I deleted them all. I swear. After you'd already sent them to someone. His voice was deadly quiet. Before you came to work for me, you sent them to an email address. Sophia's, I believe. My legs gave way, and I sank onto the couch opposite him. How did you know? I had your phone cloned the moment you stepped into my study yesterday. Every message, every email, every deleted photo, I've seen it all. You think I set you up? The accusation stung more than it should have. Sophia is my friend, the only one who helped me when I ran from Jake. I sent her the photos as insurance, just like I told you, and yet somehow the Colombians knew exactly what was in those photos. Knew about the shipment coming in tomorrow night. Knew about the meeting with the judge next week. His voice remained calm, but his eyes were cold. So you see my dilemma. Fear rose in my throat. I didn't betray you. I wouldn't. Why would I agree to work for you, to stay here if I was working against you? To gather more information, perhaps. To stay close to the target. That's insane. I was just trying to protect myself from Jake. Rossi stood, moving to pour another drink. The firelight played across his bare torso, highlighting old scars I hadn't noticed before. Then how do you explain the Colombian's knowledge? I don't know. Maybe Sophia was hacked, or maybe... I stopped suddenly as a terrible thought occurred to me. When did you find out about the photos I sent to Sophia? This morning. Why? And when did you tell Lorenzo about the meeting with the Colombians? Rossi's eyes narrowed. Right after. He came in while you were getting coffee. What if... I hesitated, afraid to voice my suspicion. What if the leak isn't me? What if it's someone closer to you? His expression darkened. Careful, Elena. Those are my men you're talking about. They've been with me for years. And how long had you known me before you offered me this position? Less than a day. Yet you trusted me enough to bring me into your inner circle, to give me access to sensitive information. I stood, moving closer to him. Why would you do that unless you already suspected someone on the inside? For a long moment he said nothing, just studied my face with those penetrating dark eyes. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Very good, Elena. Very good indeed. Confusion replaced my fear. What? You're right. I've suspected a leak for months. Small things. Shipments intercepted. Deals falling through. Rivals always one step ahead. Today's meeting was a test. Not for the Colombians, but for my own people. You used yourself as bait? I was incredulous. You could have been killed. I was never in any real danger. The restaurant was surrounded by my most trusted men, ones even Lorenzo doesn't know about. He took a step closer. But I needed to know who was feeding information to my enemies. And now, thanks to your photos and your email to Sophia, I do. Understanding dawned. It wasn't Sophia who leaked the information. Someone intercepted her email after you told Lorenzo about checking my phone. Rossi nodded. And only 3 people knew about that email. You, me, and Lorenzo. Marco found out later, but by then the trap was already set. So, Lorenzo is the traitor. The revelation was stunning. Your most trusted lieutenant. Second most trusted, Rossi corrected. Marco has always been my right hand. Lorenzo was ambitious. Too ambitious. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. And now he'll pay for his betrayal. I should have been horrified by the implied violence, but all I felt was relief that I wasn't suspected anymore. What happens now? Now? Rossi's hand lingered near my face. Now we see if you're truly committed to your new position, Elena, because once Lorenzo is dealt with, things will become complicated. Are you sure you want to be part of this world? His proximity was intoxicating, dangerous. I knew I should step away, maintain professional distance. Instead, I found myself leaning slightly toward him. I already am part of this world, I said softly, for better or worse. Something changed between us in that moment. A shift in the atmosphere as palpable as the heat from the fireplace. Rossi's dark eyes held mine, and I found myself unable to look away. His hand moved from my face to my shoulder, a touch so light it might have been imaginary. Elena, he said, my name almost a whisper on his lips. The door burst open, shattering the moment. Marco stood in the doorway, his normally impassive face tense with urgency. Boss, we've got a problem. Lorenzo's gone, left right after the meeting, and he took the ledger with him. Rossi's demeanor transformed instantly, all traces of vulnerability vanishing as he straightened, reaching for his clean shirt. When? About an hour ago. Said he was going to check on the docks, but he never arrived. His phone's off, and the car's been found abandoned 3 miles from here. Lock down everything. Change all security protocols, move tomorrow's shipment, alert our people at the borders. Rossi buttoned his shirt with swift, practiced movements, and find me Sophia's address. I started. Sophia? Why? Rossi turned to me, his expression grim. If Lorenzo knows about your connection to her, she's in danger. He'll want to tie up loose ends. Horror washed over me. Sophia, my only true friend. The only person who'd believed me about Jake, who'd helped me escape, was in danger because of me. "Let me come with you," I said, surprising myself with the urgency in my voice. "Absolutely not," Rossi replied, retrieving his holster and gun from where he'd set them aside. "It's too dangerous. She's my friend. She won't trust you if you show up without me." I stepped closer, determined. "Besides, if you leave me here, Lorenzo might come back for me. I'm safer with you." Marco and Rossi exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. Finally, Rossi nodded. "Fine, but you stay in the car unless I say otherwise. Understood?" "Yes." "Marco, bring the car around and call Dominic. I want him and his team at Sophia's place 5 minutes ago." As Marco left, Rossi finished arming himself, adding a second, smaller gun to an ankle holster. The calm, businessman facade had completely fallen away, revealing the dangerous man beneath, the man I'd always known he was, but had somehow managed to forget in our moments of connection. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice hard with authority. "Do exactly as I say when I say it. One mistake could get us all killed tonight." I nodded, fear and determination warring within me. "I understand." The drive to Sophia's apartment was tense, the silence broken only by Marco's occasional updates through the car's secure phone system. Rossi sat beside me in the back seat, his body coiled with a predatory readiness that made the confines of the luxury sedan feel too small, too intimate. "We're 2 minutes out," Marco announced from the driver's seat. "Dominic reports no activity at the apartment, but the door was open when they arrived. They've secured the building." Rossi's jaw tightened. "Too late," he murmured, almost to himself. To Marco, he said, "Circle the block once. I want to be sure Lorenzo isn't watching." My hands clenched in my lap. "If he's hurt her?" "Don't think about that now." Rossi cut me off, his voice gentler than I expected. "Focus on what you need to do. When we get there, you stay behind me at all times. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. No questions, no hesitation." The gravity of the situation hit me fully then. This wasn't a movie. It was real danger, real lives at stake. "I understand." Marco drove around the block once, then pulled up behind an unmarked van half a block from Sophia's building. A man I didn't recognize approached the car as we stopped, leaning in to speak to Rossi through the window. "Building's clear, boss. No sign of Lorenzo, but the place is tossed. Looks like he was searching for something. And the girl?" "Not here. Neighbors say they heard a disturbance about an hour ago. Women screaming, then nothing." My heart sank. "Oh God, Sophia." Rossi turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You said you sent her the photos. How? Email?" I nodded. "From a burner account I set up. I gave her the password so she could access it if anything happened to me. Would she have printed them? Saved them somewhere?" I told her not to, but I bit my lip. "Sophia's cautious. She might have made a backup." Rossi exchanged a glance with Marco. "Lorenzo's looking for the photos. If he finds them before we find him, he'll sell them to the highest bidder," Marco finished. "Probably the Colombians. We need to find him." Rossi turned back to me. Would Sophia have told him anything, under pressure? The implication made me sick, but I forced myself to think rationally. She's stronger than she looks, but if he threatened her life, she might have mentioned the lake house. Lake house? Her family has a cabin about 2 hours north of here. We talked about it as a potential meeting place if things went bad. If Lorenzo pushed her hard enough, she might have told him about it, thinking she was leading him away from the real evidence. Rossi nodded once, decisive. "Marco, get the chopper ready. Call Dominic and tell him to meet us at the airfield." To me, he said, "How well do you know this cabin?" "I've been there once, after I first ran from Jake. It's isolated, at the end of a long drive through the woods. One way in, one way out. Perfect place for an ambush," Marco muttered. "Or a trap," Rossi countered. "If Lorenzo's desperate enough to kidnap Sophia, he's desperate enough to make mistakes. We can use that." As we drove to the private airfield where Rossi kept his helicopter, I stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. How had my life come to this? Just days ago, I'd been an anonymous maid, invisible in the shadow world of Rossi's estate. Now I was racing toward a confrontation with a traitor who'd kidnapped my only friend, sitting beside a man who killed his enemies without remorse. And yet, despite the danger, despite knowing exactly who and what Matteo Rossi was, I felt safer with him than I ever had with Jake. The helicopter ride was brief, but tense. I sat beside Rossi, our shoulders touching in the confined space, while Marco piloted and Dominic, a large, silent man with military bearing, occupied the fourth seat. No one spoke. The rhythmic beat of the rotors made conversation difficult anyway. As we approached the coordinates I'd given for Sophia's cabin, Rossi handed me a set of night vision binoculars. "There," I said, pointing to a small structure nestled among the trees near the shore of a small lake. "That's it." Rossi took the binoculars, scanning the area. One vehicle parked outside, lights on inside. He passed the binoculars to Dominic. "Assessment?" 2 figures visible through the windows. One seated, probably restrained. The other moving around. No additional vehicles or personnel that I can see. Rossi turned to Marco. "Land at the secondary site. We'll approach on foot." "I'm coming with you," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. Rossi studied me for a long moment. "You'll stay back with Marco until we've secured the location. Sophia will be terrified. She needs to see a friendly face." "After we've handled Lorenzo," he insisted. I started to argue, then caught the look in his eye. Not anger, but genuine concern. He was trying to protect me. I nodded reluctantly. "Fine." The helicopter touched down in a clearing half a mile from the cabin. As we disembarked, Rossi pulled me aside. "If anything happens to me," he said quietly, "Marco will get you and Sophia to safety. You'll be provided with new identities, enough money to disappear permanently." The implication that he might not survive the night sent a chill through me. "Nothing's going to happen to you." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Your confidence is touching, but unrealistic. Lorenzo is dangerous, especially now that he's cornered." "So are you," I said, surprising myself with the fierce certainty in my voice. Rossi's eyes softened momentarily. He reached out, his hand brushing my cheek in a gesture so brief I might have imagined it. "Stay with Marco. That's an order." He turned away, signaling to Dominic, and the 2 men disappeared into the darkness of the forest, moving with the silent precision of predators. Marco stood beside me, his hand resting on his weapon. "He'll be fine," he said, correctly interpreting my worried expression. "I've seen him walk away from much worse situations." "How long have you worked for him?" I asked, needing the distraction. 15 years, since he first took over the family business." "You mean when his father died?" Marco gave me a sideways look. "That's the official story." I remembered what Rossi had told me about his mother, about his father's abuse. He killed him, didn't he? His father. Marco's silence was answer enough. We waited in tense silence for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The night was eerily quiet. The only sounds the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore and the distant call of an owl. Then, suddenly, the stillness was shattered by the sharp crack of gunfire. "Stay here," Marco ordered, drawing his weapon as more gunshots echoed through the night. "But Sophia..." "We'll die if you rush in there and distract Matteo," he snapped. "Stay. Here." He disappeared into the trees, leaving me alone with my fear and helplessness. The gunfire had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow worse. I paced the small clearing, my imagination conjuring terrible scenarios. Rossi bleeding out on the cabin floor, Sophia caught in the crossfire, Lorenzo escaping to hunt me down next. I couldn't stand it anymore. Ignoring Marco's orders, I moved toward the cabin, staying within the tree line. The night was dark, but the nearly full moon provided enough light to navigate. As I approached, I could see the cabin's front door hanging open, light spilling onto the porch. I crept closer, every sense heightened by fear and adrenaline. A figure emerged from the cabin. Dominic, his massive frame unmistakable even in silhouette. He was supporting someone smaller, a woman, Sophia. Relief flooded through me. She was alive. I started to run toward them, then stopped as another figure appeared in the doorway. Marco, his gun still drawn. But where was Rossi? Where was Lorenzo? A single gunshot answered my unspoken question, so close it made me jump. It had come from behind the cabin, near the lake. Without thinking, I changed direction, moving through the trees toward the sound. I reached the lakeshore just in time to see two figures struggling at the water's edge, Rossi and Lorenzo, locked in a deadly embrace. Even in the dim light, I could see they were both bloodied, Lorenzo clutching his side where dark liquid seeped between his fingers, Rossi with blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Lorenzo had a knife, the blade glinting in the moonlight as he slashed at Rossi, who barely managed to dodge the attack. Rossi's gun lay in the sand several feet away, just out of reach as the two men grappled. Neither had seen me. I could run back, get Marco and Dominic, the smart choice, the safe choice. Instead, I moved silently toward the discarded weapon. My fingers closed around the grip, the metal cold and heavy in my hand. I had never fired a gun before, had never even held one. But as I watched Lorenzo gain the upper hand, pinning Rossi to the ground with the knife inching toward his throat, instinct took over. "Stop!" My voice rang out, steadier than I felt. I raised the gun with both hands, aiming at Lorenzo's back. "Let him go." Lorenzo froze, then slowly turned his head to look at me, his face twisted in a sneer, the maid to the rescue. How touching. He pressed the knife harder against Rossi's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. "Put the gun down or I'll kill him right now." "You'll kill him anyway," I said, struggling to keep the gun steady. "Let him go, Lorenzo. You won't shoot," he said with cold certainty. "You don't have it in you. You're not one of us." He was right. I wasn't like them. Wasn't a killer. But I had survived Jake. I had survived months on the run. I had survived in Rossi's world. And now, I would do what was necessary to protect the man who had protected me. "Last chance," I warned, moving closer. Lorenzo laughed. A harsh sound. "You think you matter to him? You're just another pretty toy to play with. Once he's bored, he'll discard you like all the others." I remembered Mrs. Vega's warning. "You're not the first." But I also remembered the look in Rossi's eyes when he told me about his mother, the gentle touch of his hand on my face, the way he'd risked his life to save my friend. "Maybe," I acknowledged. "But right now, he's all that stands between me and Jake. Between me and men like you who think women are toys to be played with and discarded." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. "You stupid bite." I pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening, the recoil stronger than I'd expected. Lorenzo jerked, a look of stunned disbelief crossing his face as he toppled sideways into the shallow water. The knife fell from his hand, disappearing beneath the dark surface of the lake. Rossi was on his feet in an instant, retrieving the gun from my shaking hands. He checked Lorenzo, who lay motionless, half submerged in the gently lapping water. "Is he—" I couldn't finish the question. "Yes." Rossi turned to me, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "You saved my life." I stared at my hands, expecting to feel remorse, horror, something, but all I felt was a strange, hollow relief. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Elena. He moved closer, wiping blood from his face with his sleeve. "You chose me." Before I could respond, Marco and Dominic appeared, weapons drawn. They took in the scene with professional detachment. Lorenzo's body in the water, the gun in Rossi's hand, me standing shell-shocked on the shore. "Sophia?" I asked, suddenly remembering my friend. "Safe," Marco assured me. "Shaken up, but not seriously hurt. She's in the cabin." I moved to go to her, but Rossi caught my arm. "Wait." To the others, he said, "Clean this up. Make it look like a boating accident, and bring the car around for Elena and me." Marco nodded, already pulling out a phone to make the necessary calls. Rossi led me away from the scene, back toward the cabin. We walked in silence, his hand on the small of my back, steady and reassuring despite everything that had just happened. Sophia sat huddled on the cabin's sofa, a blanket around her shoulders, her face pale but resolute. When she saw me, she stood, tears filling her eyes. "Elena, oh my God, are you okay?" She rushed to embrace me, her body trembling slightly. "I'm so sorry," I tried not to tell him about the lake house, but he— Shh, it's okay, I soothed her. You're safe now, that's all that matters. Over her shoulder, I met Rossi's eyes. He stood in the doorway, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something between possession and protection. Miss Sophia, he said, his voice gentle in a way I hadn't heard before. I owe you an apology for the danger my organization's breach put you in. You have my word that nothing like this will ever happen again. Sophia pulled back from our embrace, looking between Rossi and me with dawning understanding. You're with him now, she said quietly. Not a question, but a realization. It's complicated, I replied, because there was no simple explanation for what Rossi and I had become to each other in these few intense days. She nodded slowly. Jake found me first, about a month ago. Threatened me, but I convinced him I hadn't heard from you. A small, fierce smile curved her lips. Then I called in an anonymous tip about his drug use to his father's campaign office. Last I heard, the senator had shipped him off to some discreet rehab facility to avoid a scandal. I stared at her in amazement. Sweet, gentle Sophia had gone toe-to-toe with Jake and won. You are incredible. I protect the people I love. She glanced at Rossi. I'm guessing you do too, Mr. Rossi. Something unspoken passed between them, some understanding that transcended words. Rossi inclined his head in acknowledgement. Indeed. Marco appeared at the door. Car's ready, boss. Thank you. Rossi turned to me. It's time to go. Dominic will ensure Sophia gets home safely. I hugged my friend one last time. I'll call you soon. I promised. You'd better. She squeezed my hand. And Elena? Be careful. But also, be happy. The drive back to the helicopter was silent, the events of the night settling around us like a heavy cloak. I had killed a man. I should have been horrified, traumatized. Instead, I felt only a strange sense of clarity, as if the world had suddenly come into sharp focus. What happens now? I finally asked as the helicopter lifted off, carrying us back to a life that could never be the same. Rossi took my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. That depends on you. On me? You've seen the worst of my world now, experienced it firsthand. His dark eyes searched mine. You could still walk away. I would set you up somewhere safe, somewhere not even Jake could find you if he ever gets out of rehab. I considered it a normal life, free from fear, free from the shadows of Rossi's world. It was tempting, in its way. But then, I thought of the look in his eyes when he spoke of his mother, the gentle touch of his hand on my face, the unwavering protection he had offered me when he barely knew me. What if I don't want to walk away? I asked softly. The corner of his mouth lifted in the barest hint of a smile. Then you accept that there's no going back, that you're part of this life, my life, with all its dangers and complications. He paused. And its rewards. I thought of Jake, of the false love that had nearly destroyed me. Then I thought of Rossi, who had never pretended to be anything other than what he was, dangerous, powerful, complex, but also honorable in his way, protective of those under his care. I made my choice when I pulled that trigger, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. I chose you. His hand tightened around mine, and in that moment I knew I had found something I never expected. Not just safety or protection, but a place where I truly belonged. With a man who saw me clearly, who knew my darkest moment and accepted it, just as I accepted his. As the lights of the city appeared on the horizon, Matteo pulled me closer, his lips brushing my ear. Welcome home, Elena. And despite everything, the danger, the violence, the uncertainty of the future, I knew that I was finally home.